I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast, talking about ways you can reconnect with your partner. A lot of times when we are stuck in the baby making mode, we've forgotten about how to connect with our partner, and sex may just become very on a schedule. There may be a lot of stress around it. We may feel a lot of pressure. And our libidos may be different. One of us may be grieving and the other one may not be even interested in sex, except on the fertile days. So we really talk about how to reconnect with your partner spiritually, physically, digging into, orgasm after an IVF treatment, what the studies are saying on that. And really, how do you reconnect with your partner to build a strong foundation for when your baby comes. So definitely grab your partner for this episode and hope you enjoy, and feel free to leave a review on iTunes. Super excited to announce that our Functional Fertility mini series begins tomorrow, Tuesday, December the 3rd. And here's what you need to do to ensure you don't miss out. All you need to do is hit subscribe on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this. So with the functional approach, we use targeted steps that help maximize your fertility and get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So for the next 3 days, you'll receive bite-sized, actionable steps that can help you right now so that you can prepare your body for a baby. So tomorrow, on Tuesday's episode, you'll learn about the myths with fertility treatment and why a one-size-fits-all approach does not work. On Wednesday's episode, you'll learn how to eat right to maximize your fertility without starving or drinking green juice all day long. And on Thursday's episode, you'll learn how to minimize stress and overwhelm without spending all day long sitting in meditation. So the first episode drops tomorrow, Tuesday, December the 3rd. And to ensure you don't miss out, all you need to do is hit subscribe on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this.
There's this stress and pressure of we need to do this, and we need to hurry, and my time's running out. And there's so much pressure. It's right? I mean, women feel so much, but it's this idea of slowing things down and trusting your journey, being in the present moment.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Clark, and my mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Most of all, I want you to wake up. So with functional medicine, we can discover what causes infertility and eventually reverse the condition. Today, I'm welcoming Denise Wiesner to the podcast, and we're digging into how to restore intimacy during the fertility journey. So Denise Wiesner is the founder of Natural Healing and Acupuncture Clinic in West LA. She's an internationally recognized traditional Chinese medicine practitioner specializing in the whole systems Chinese medicine approach to women's health, sexuality, and fertility. And since 1994, Denise has treated and helped women manage challenges from menstrual disorders through menopause and from infertility to pregnancy. Using a combination of acupuncture, diet and lifestyle counseling, nutritional supplements, and Chinese herbs, Denise has helped thousands of couples navigate the tricky and often stressful journey towards fertility without losing their loving connection. She has a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Kinesiology and a Master of Arts in Traditional Chinese Medicine, and is a certified sex coach. You can check out her website at Denise Wiesner, at Denise, Denise, Wiesner, Wiesner.com. And before we jump into today's show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this to make sure you never miss an episode. Hey, Denise, excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Can you share your story about how you came to do this work?
A long time ago, was having fertility issues. I had gotten pregnant with my first child pretty easily, and I was having a struggle with my second. I had a miscarriage, and I thought it was going to be simple, cinchy to get pregnant. That was very shocking. And then 3 months later, I got pregnant again with a baby, but I'm a Tay-Sex carrier, and I was, and so was my late husband. And so that meant that 25% of all my pregnancies would perhaps be a Tay-Sex baby. And so it happened. I had got pregnant with a Tay-Sex baby, and I had to terminate. It's a fatal disease. So that's the nice thing about it's not a question. The baby does end up dying, and there's no cure. So then I went to lots of different healers and acupuncturists, because I'm an acupuncturist. And, nobody really integrated the Western and Eastern medicine. And no one checked my thyroid. All the acupuncturists were like, yeah, you need to, get your breathing better. And I was like, wait a minute, I want to have a baby. I don't care about my breathing. And at that point, I really started started taking the matters into my own hands and ended up getting my thyroid tested and finding out it was very low, and got some help for that, and then got pregnant finally and decided that there was a real need to blend the Western and Eastern traditions, and got into treating fertility, more into treating fertility.
Excellent. Yeah, I find a lot of people that come to this work, it's they've had their own personal journey. So thanks very much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And so today we're going to be digging in a little bit more about how to restore intimacy. Couples going through the infertility journey, it can become very much about baby making instead of the love making. That could have been lost. So we're going to dig a little bit more into, like, how do we get back that playfulness if it's just been years of us, doing time sex and the like. So how would we start with that?
I really feel it's so important for couples to, sort of abandon the baby making and also to connect, really to restore intimacy, because this does become a job for many of my patients and a lot of couples. And so it's just because it becomes this job, and then it stays this job where like they're not even enjoying intimacy and sexuality other times besides their ovulation window, right? It's best to start reconnecting and exploring, desires and wants, and actually just spending time together, right? I think so many couples nowadays are so busy. Everything's just like, there's just no time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so with that, do you have any kind of some tips as to where to start? If we're like, wait a minute, we're just all around, it's all around the cycle, and it's all timed, and we've actually kind of forgotten how to connect. Is it, I coach couples, and we actually just have them not like, we don't laser in on the infertility. It's like, oh wait, how do we get back to date night? How do we get back to having joy, looking at joy in your life, or what makes you happy? And then that kind of then there's sort of a ripple effect. So do you have anything that you would recommend to your couples?
I think it starts with first, and I have this in Conceiving with Love, my book, but this idea of kind of setting the stage. Oftentimes we just sort of do a habitual kind of like, okay, it's in bed, it's nothing special. It's like, we have to do this, let's get busy. But I love this idea of creating space, not only creating space in the relationship, but creating like the actual space, perhaps like it's a time to buy some cool sheets, different sheets, right? Or get some candles, of course, non-scented, or, natural candles, put on your favorite tunes, I just, sometimes the simple things about setting the stage, just changing the room up leads to a kind of a more intimacy in terms of the setting. So that's one of my suggestions. And then I think it's really great for couples to kind of get back to the basics, like kissing and, touching. Sometimes it's just so into the, like, we have to have intercourse, that the whole foreplay. And I have a lot of exercises that I give couples, like, what if you spent like an hour, like, getting some really cool massage oil and just massaging each other, touching each other, asking each other for like what silly things you might want. Like maybe you want your back tickled, or just playfulness and touch is a great way to increase intimacy.
Mm-hmm. And then let's sort of go into, so what if someone has a different libido? So maybe one could be grieving or really not even interested in sex, only around the fertile days. What are some steps to help with that?
As an acupuncturist, I really know that for women, libido is very complicated. It's a little more straightforward for men. And there oftentimes, people have mismatched libidos, but I feel that there's a discrepancy between arousal and desire for a lot of women. In other words, if you get in bed with me and you said to me, like, let's have sex now, I might think, oh, I'm so tired, I'm grieving, I don't feel good in my body, right? So one of the things is, we as women, many of us, it take about 20 to 45 minutes to become aroused. In other words, if you actually touched me or you sent me cute text during the day and you told me how beautiful I was, and we spent some time together and we maybe cooked dinner together and you aroused me with foreplay, I might be in the mood more, right? So that's one, yeah, because it's not an intellectual thing. It's actually a sort of a physical thing. But the second thing is that I think women and men are also guilty of this. We have like kind of body image issues. A lot of women just like, especially if they're going through fertility treatments, like don't feel exactly sexy and in their bodies, right? So that's kind of a personal a journey where a woman would, try to work on, loving her body, eating really well, exercising, maybe taking a fun exercise class, a dance class, or just, working the body so we feel good in who we are, right?
Yeah. And I think it's, yeah, exactly. It's a process and not just like a little tap going, okay, I'm ready. And so as you say, like doing the leading up to even the whole day, really paying attention to each other as a couple.
Yes, it's so important, and because we're used to things being really goal oriented. Like, we need to make a baby, so this is what it requires, right? It requires us to have it at this particular time, and now it's like this stressful job. And we forget that making a baby is really a love connection where we open our hearts. And in Chinese medicine, that energy of the heart connects into our reproductive organs, into our, our sexual organs, basically. Like, when we open our heart, when we gaze at each other, when we really see each other, we connect into our intimacy, our sexuality. So it's an intimacy exercise. It's not just a job.
Yeah. And so as advice for the male partner, do you have some advice?
I think, yes, I do have advice. I mean, the truth is I work with many males, and males sometimes have difficulty too. Like, there's a lot of men who have problems, getting an erection because there's so much pressure, right? It's like, we have to do it now, like the wife's like, I'm ovulating, honey. And some men don't even really want to know when their wives or partners are ovulating. So advice for the males, I think that the idea is slow down. I think it's advice for both. Slow down, spend time together, increase intimacy, ask your partner how they want to be touched. Ask, maybe there's some fun games. And I think men also learn a lot about sexuality through pornography. And I want to sort of say, like, that's not real. Mm. Women do need this time to become aroused, right? And that's really an art of paying attention and listening and asking. So that would be my advice for men.
Yeah, and as far, do you want everything else to say about pornography at all?
I am definitely not anti-pornography. I think there's a time and place for fun stuff, but when men are doing too much pornography, I think it's, sometimes they have difficulty translating it into sex with their partner, because it's a very fast, pornography is a certain amount of minutes. It's geared toward men. It's about climaxing and enjoying, or, voyeurism. It's about a lot of things. But I think when you're trying to make a baby, less on the pornography, more on the partner, right? The sexuality should be saved for this very intimate moment, right? So I'm not anti. You could bring it, into the bedroom. Sometimes for couples, that kind of spices things up, right? But to share it together, and to realize that women are not that fast. We're kind of slow to boil, as they say.
Yeah. So include it together, and then sort of that focusing on the connection part of this, and taking, as you say, the slow to boil thing. And any tips for sex on a schedule, like the good and the bad of that?
I think it's an individual thing, right? Sex on a schedule. I mean, definitely, if you're having it more often, then maybe it's not as scheduled, right? If it's just when it's ovulating, then it's really, there's so much pressure on that one time. But if you're having it sort of regularly, even if it's in the ovulation window, like every other day or whatever. I mean, some people say, should we have it every day? Should we have it every other day? It's, it's kind of a personal thing. Some couples really love to have it every day, then you should. Some people's like, being sick and not feeling well, we have to do it. I feel like that's just like bad juju. When we're making a baby, you want to be healthy and intimate and juicy and feeling good. But, this, like, we're sick, we have to do it now. I don't know that, I have couples that are like, he had the flu. Like, like maybe that's not a good time, right? So sex on a schedule, I say sometimes we just, sometimes there are fun, we have to laugh, right? I mean, sometimes it is kind of funny, it's a quickie, or, and other times it's like, making the time. So sex on a schedule is about partners still spending time, still trying to make it an intimate, fun, loving, connected experience, and changing it up, maybe playing, or dressing up, or exploring sex toys. I mean, you can do all of that and still have sex on a schedule. right?
And we were talking about this before the interview, talking about, and I was looking at a post the other day just on Instagram talking about, I'm not sure, I think it was in Facebook. Someone was asking the question, oh, can I have an orgasm after I've had a fertility treatment? And so different thoughts on that. And you've interviewed so many people and some doctors on this. What's your take on that if you've had an IVF or an IUI?
Yeah, well, an IUI, you definitely can, because an IUI is pretty much an interuterine insemination is pretty much about they have you to after they do the procedure, they tell you to go home and have sex, right? Intercourse. So you definitely can have an orgasm in any which way after you have an insemination. After an IVF, it's pelvic rest, and that means they don't want doctors, all the fertility clinics that I've interviewed, they don't want women having orgasms, and because they don't want the uterus to contract, because there's a theory, and it hasn't been proven, that if the uterus contracts, that maybe, that's not a good thing for implantation. There's not any research on this. And so we don't know how long a woman shouldn't have an orgasm. Maybe the baby's implanted. Maybe it's like you're still in the wait and you'd like to have an orgasm. Most women are probably too scared to do anything after an IVF, but you'd like to have an orgasm, but they said pelvic rest. So different doctors will say different things because they don't know. And I think with women with an IVF, let's say you had an orgasm and, your baby's already probably implanted, right? So it's, maybe it's, a week after your IVF. If you have an orgasm and you don't get pregnant, most women will be like, oh no, it's because I had an orgasm. Because doctors have bed rest and that's not even implicated anymore. It's this idea that they just want really nothing to cause stress, or because they want women to not blame that, that orgasm or whatever. So in terms of orgasm after an IVF, it's really unknown. There isn't any research saying that it's not a good idea. And truthfully, if it wasn't, I interviewed one doctor and he was like, yeah, truthfully, none of us would be born, because when you have a baby, it implants, you have sex again, you have an orgasm, and you still have a baby, right? Mm-hmm. But IVF's just a funny animal, because it's not like what happens normally, because we're sort of doing it in a petri dish. And yeah, go ahead.
This woman that I saw in the post, she was worrying about, what happens if I have a sexy dream and then I have an orgasm in my sleep? Am I totally screwed?
You know what? I really want to say there is no research that says you can't have an orgasm. I really, there really isn't. Once a baby has implanted, embryo has implanted, barring there's no complications, barring that you haven't had frequent miscarriages or that you are a bleeder, right? Some women bleed during the IVF procedure, right? And when they're in the wait, even though the baby's okay, barring that there's no issues, probably if you have an orgasm in your dream, it's fine, right? I mean, and none of us would be here, probably because that's a natural occurrence. So I wouldn't worry at all about that, because like I said, there's no research saying that the contractions is going to dislodge an embryo that's implanted already.
And so why are you saying we should use the word vulva instead of vagina?
Because a vagina actually is the canal where the sort of the baby goes through and a penis goes in. The vulva contain all the other parts, like your clitoris, the tip of the clitoris, not the whole thing, is in your vulva. And there's erectile tissue on either side of your vagina. And so it's really the correct anatomy to call those those parts are the vulva. And a lot of women have orgasms that are clitoral, aren't with penis and vagina, and people are they're ashamed to ask for, perhaps their partner to rub their clitoris while they're inside, or they rub it themselves or use a toy, because that's how they orgasm. Women somehow think we should all orgasm vaginally, and some do and some don't. So it's nice to know that there's a vagina and a vulva, and they each give pleasure.
Yeah, I think in your book, you go into, I know in the free chapter that you offer, that you have, you go into quite a lot of depth about the different, did you want to talk a little bit about that? Because you have pictures and some.
I've taken a lot of seminars and really went into some of the classics and ancient thinkings on women's vulvas. And the truth is they are so beautiful and they are so different. What gives women pleasure is different. So some women, their clitoris is very far from their vaginal opening. So, and for some women, it's like when they have intercourse, their clitoris also gets or the tip of their clitoris gets massaged because of their anatomy. Yes. And so knowing your person, knowing as a woman, your anatomy it would be more empowering than if you don't know it. And another example are labias. I recently had a 23-year-old come to me for pain. She was in college, and she was graduating from college, and she was coming for pain in her neck and back. But when I looked at her intake form, it said labioplasty. And I thought, why would at 19, and I was like, God, why would a young girl get labioplasty? And that's when they actually cut your labia and structure it. And I asked her, what happened? And she said she was having pain. She was riding a bike. And so they decided what the fix was to cut her labia, to give her, to make it smaller. And there was a trend, and I don't know if it's still happening, where young women were wanting their labias, who maybe had long labias, wanted their labias to be cut so it looked more like porn stars who don't have a lot of labias. And this idea that long labias aren't pretty or attractive is where we get, disconnected from our own anatomy, because long labias for some women could be a source of a lot of erotic pleasure. They can be tugged and pulled on. And so I think it's important to really understand anatomy and see different pictures as women of vulvas, just to know that we're beautiful and perfect the way our vulvas look.
Yeah. Having that kind of surgery. Yeah. That's kind of, I've heard of it, but yeah, it's shocking, isn't it?
It was, she had Oh, and then the surgeon decided to reposition her clitoris. Did I mention that? And oh my gosh, that's terrible.
And then you talk about pelvic floor health, and we've had a pelvic floor specialist come on the podcast and discuss that. So I definitely recommend going back to that episode. But so you talk about pelvic floor health actually for men and women. So can you kind of explore that a little bit for us?
For women, I think we're sort of, a lot of women can't really, well, maybe some can, but figure out where their muscles are. Their muscles are pelvic floor muscles. And some women have such tight pelvic floor muscles that they can't enjoy intercourse because they clench up and have what we call vaginismus, difficulty having a penis go inside at all. So it's the pelvic floor, too tight or too loose pelvic floor muscles can cause problems. For men, I just had a man who clenches, he's having problems sometimes getting an erection, and he actually has pain because he clenches his pelvic floor muscles so much. In fact, the pelvic floor physical therapist was reteaching him how to poop because he was kind of doing it all wrong. So she said. So I think for men and women, there's research for both, that having a not too tight or not too loose pelvic floor muscles can really enhance our sexuality.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people, when they think of pelvic floor, they think of Kegels. And so what's your take on that?
I think Kegels are important, but you can also overkill Kegel. I'm a Chinese practitioner, so jade egg is in my repertoire, but I know women are do yoga with jade egg. And it's those muscles are, can you imagine? It's keep it in, those muscles, need to be, tight, but you don't want them too tight. It's a balance between tight and loose. It's having a strong pelvic floor, but not so you're clenching, or that it's too loose, especially if you've had a baby, it's probably, good time to do Kegel exercises. So I think Kegels are important. And
so as far as, so do you give your couples some homework assignments? What would those look like typically?
Because I'm a practitioner of in the Eastern tradition, I usually try to give some Eastern types of exercises. So one of the things I really love for both women and men to do is what's called the microcosmic orbic breath. Oh, yeah. And that's this exercise, and it's beautiful to do as a couple. It's a little hard to explain to the couple, but it's really this idea of breathing, kind of breathing all the way up our spine, from our pelvis all the way up our spine, and then from our top of our head down back toward our pelvic area, and then giving maybe a little Kegel. But, for partners to do that. And then also while eye gazing, because in Chinese medicine, the liver energy, which also goes to the genitals, goes to the eyes. So eyes and genitals do connect. When we're breathing like this, we can also when we're inhaling, we can we're facing our partner and looking at them in the eye. Then we can inhale up our partner's spine, and then inhale up their partner's spine, exhale the front, and then bring it into us. And we just imagine that the energy is going up their spine, making an infinity sign. And probably there's more, I think you can see it more in Conceiving with Love, the diagram, but it's this beautiful way of like just connecting in and looking our partner in the eyes, because a lot of partners don't look at each other anymore. We're so busy, we're busy texting and we just don't see our partner. And eye gazing is a great way to increase intimacy. So I'll like eye gazing practices is something I'll give my patients. And another thing is, I know this sounds really dumb, but making out, kissing. The tongue in Chinese medicine connects to the heart. And we just talked about how the heart a little while ago is connected to our reproductive organs, right? So kissing is a great way to stimulate to arouse ourselves, arouse our partner. So I'll have my patients just kind of kiss, like when they're like, wow, I haven't done that in a long time. Basic things like that. And I have a lot of other things I'll give my partners as well.
Yeah, I've done that microcosmic orbit by myself, though. I did it with that Kim Anami. I took her course. And yeah, it's neat where actually you visualize that going up to the head and around. And yeah, it's very, I don't know, it's very powerful. It seems kind of strange when you're explaining it, but like if you're just listening to this now and hearing this, but it's really powerful. So I really I recommend doing it. And then, doing it with someone else and then seeing it go around both of you. Is that right? You'd see.
Yeah, it's like an infinity. You actually, you actually inhale up your partner's spine, exhale down their front, and then you imagine their energy, that you've just circled going into you, and they're doing it to you while you're doing it to them. And it's just breathing, So a lot of times, I'll give my partners like chakra exercises to do together to get the chakras going, where they face each other and like breathe into the different energies, right? They might do what's called the yab yum posture, which, I say is like sitting in your partner's lap, right? But you could just face each other also, or lie down. It's like connecting your lower chakras, the first chakra, the second chakra, our stomach, our belly, our heart, our throat, our eyes, our third eye, just kind of enmeshing it's like a melting hug where you're just really breathing and connecting into each different energy together is really potent for couples to do, because usually it's like, okay, it's time to like, let's have sex, like a little on your breast, a little here. It's not like this deep energy connection. So yeah, deep embraces are really wonderful too.
Yeah, and I've done that eye gazing in a retreat. So, which even that was with a stranger doing that. It's interesting how we just want to look away. So it can be uncomfortable. Now, obviously with your partner, just really focusing on that can be, it's like you're staring into their soul. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And then, all sorts of things in terms of like, sometimes I'll give people acupressure points to press on each other, sort of like a little acupressure massage, right? The sacrum in the back is full of so many amazing, we say acupuncture points, which increases fertility, especially around the sacrum. So doing this like low back massage and doing the sacrum and teaching couples how to like touch each other, because you want to open up that whole area and get blood flow there, and not just like penis and vulva and vagina. It's like the inner thighs and the belly and the hips and all those areas are, can really be erogenous zones and can help increase blood flow, increase fertility too.
So obviously if we're feeling stressed around this, like, is there anything you can suggest there if we're just feeling like the whole thing has now become so, if we do these steps to reconnect, and then it's more, as we go into it, we feel more aroused and desire kind of comes along. But if we're feeling like super stressed and it's got to be done at a certain times, like in the pressure and all of that stuff, what's your take on that?
I think stress is a huge factor, right? It's a problem in our global community. So I think in terms of dealing with stress, I think each person has to kind of find ways to reframe what they're going through. There's this concept in Chinese medicine of Wu Wei, which is like sort of like do nothing, but everything gets done. There's a point of, it doesn't mean you don't do anything, but it's this sort of like centering point where we have to have some type of practice, like meditation or spiritual practice. It's really about faith and trust in what we cannot see. And fertility really demands that of us, right? It's this amazing lesson in trust. I feel sort of was a great lesson for me. And I still use the same lessons that I've learned in fertility and that I tell my patients for myself in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Those fertility lessons run deep, but it's this deep lesson of how do we deal with stress? Because, it doesn't end after you go through fertility and you have a baby. Then there's a whole other level of stress, right? So having a practice of some sort of meditation practice for each individual to have, taking time to balance the body, taking time to have support from people, and like listening to podcasts like this, I think are excellent tools for people to reconnect to the trust and faith of their own journey in this lifetime. Because it's a journey, right? It's like there's this like stress and pressure of like, we need to do this, and we need to hurry, and this, my time's running out, and there's so much pressure. It's like, right? I mean, women feel so much, but it's this idea of like slowing things down and trusting your journey and being in the present moment. I think that's a great practice of trying to not like get ahead of yourself, but like this moment, being here now is I feel like, so having meditation practices, listening to a fabulous podcast, and learning how to be in the present moment. Because even in sexuality, like, when women are like, oh my God, in my head, I got to do this. And oh my gosh, maybe I have to orgasm. I had a woman who like faked orgasm because she just felt like her partner needed that. So she would, have to time it. But this idea of having to be in our head to think we have to fake an orgasm, you can't have an orgasm if in your head. You can't enjoy sensation and pleasure if you're focused on goals. Okay, this is baby making. So one of the things is to slow down and really like get into pleasure of life. Learn, remember, just touch for touch's sake without like having to be so goal oriented. So I think the pressure and stress, there's so many things. Acupuncture. I mean, I'm an acupuncturist. I do a ton of acupuncture and herbal medicine for stress to help patients learn how to slow their nervous systems down and to trust in their body and in their journeys.
Yeah, I think with the meditation, and really, I use the 5-minute journal every day after I do my meditation, and I literally, my day's affirmation always is to be present, because that's something where I want to, run ahead and do all these different things. But I'm like, if I'm present in the moment, you can still move, you can still, each day take action, but really being present of where you are, because otherwise then it just creates this, you're frustrated and you're pissed off that you're not exactly at the destination, and you never will get that the destination is never there, right? It's this elusive thing. Yeah. So to be present is the ultimate. And like, that's where you have the faith and trust and the peace when you're right here, right now.
Right. And I think that, I think I wrote just recently somewhere about this negativity bias that we all have. Like we all kind of, our brains tend to go to the negative. Like, the fear-based, right? It's just sort of what our bodies are wired for. And in Chinese medicine, fear is the kidney energy and the water element. And that fear and that water element is also our fertility, right? When we have fear, we're not, again, present. We're mobilized for stress. It comes down to how do we deal with fear, right? Fear of the unknown. And one of the things I also love, besides being in the now, is a gratitude practice. Because I think that because we have this negativity bias, we forget about all the things that are going well. I'm guilty of this too. Like, oh no, I have to, do a lot of like, everything works out. Everything always works out. I'm trusting in my journey. I'm so grateful. I'm healthy. And I have to really make a point to change my programming in my mind to make it more positive.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is like cultivating the mindset, as you say. Yeah. We have that negativity bias, and next thing you know, we're catastrophizing with the future or ruminating about the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
The comparison game, which is, can be not a fun place to hang out for, days, months, and years. So it's like, I think we all go down there, but it's to be aware of when you're there and go, oh, wait a minute. Well, that's interesting. I've just gone there again. Then you can, bring awareness.
Right. Absolutely no judgment. It's like the presence of just noticing and becoming aware of what we do, what our habits are. And this translates to having a child, right? I mean, It's like, the stuff that you learn in fertility is such a blessing. I feel like the fertility journey is a blessing. I know it's hard for people who are struggling, but you learn so much about yourself and your partner, and it can really foster deep, deep intimacy. right? How do we deal with struggle? How do we do when things don't turn out the way we'd like them to? How do we cultivate patience? It's a big one where people, I want it now. Like I'm doing everything right. It should happen. When it's like, we really have to trust in patience and have patience for our journey. So a lot of things, can translate into when you have a kid, you have to do all those things. You have to be patient. And so it's great practice in fertility.
Is there anything you'd like to say about self-pleasuring? I think you talk about this in your book as well. Anything there?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of taboo about self-pleasuring. And, it depends on what your culture and how you were brought up. And for women, there's studies showing that when women, masturbated when they were younger, they're more likely to have orgasms later. This idea of being a self-explorer and understanding, what you like and then translating it to be able to tell your partner. Some women don't even know what they like, so they don't even know what to ask for, and they're not satisfied sexually, but they don't know what they like. So being an adventure and learning about your body, and it's really the sort of like love of our body that allows us to share this love with our partner, right? That we feel good in who we are. And so it's self-love is so very, very important. I have patients that, like, especially if they're going through fertility, are like, I feel crummy, I'm overweight, my belly's too fat, I don't feel sexy, and they don't want anyone touching them because they don't feel good in who they are. So the self-pleasuring is this idea of really putting love in ourselves, without a goal, without an orgasm goal or without any goal, but just to sort of touch ourselves, sometimes just stroking our body and our hands and our arms and just like, you're beautiful, you're beautiful and you're perfect just the way you are. Is a great affirmation.
Yeah, so not necessarily with the goal of orgasm. So what's your take on toys?
I think toys are great and fun to play with for individuals and couples. And I actually have I've shared some in my book about, like, I interviewed sex toy experts and got to have all these sort of fun toys to play with. They're great. Sometimes they add things in the bedroom. They spice things up, they have toys that like vibrate the clitoris while you're having intercourse, and all sorts of fun things to play with. I say even a trip to, if you're in a city where it has like a sex toy shop. I know it sounds like kind of sometimes scary to go in one of those, but I feel like that's kind of like an adventure in itself. Like, what do they have? This is like, what do they have? So interesting. So many things to play with.
Do you have one, like a company or you recommend or anything? Or
I'm in Los Angeles, so the Pleasure I think it's the Pleasure Chest, right? Is in Hollywood, and they have classes there. I've actually taken some classes with my partner, and how fun. Learn, just sort of like, I couldn't believe I was there, but I've had a tour, like I've had tours, and learned about all these things I didn't know about, and so much fun to like spice things up. They even have fun, like games that you can play, card games, and we forget that it's fun. It can be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so is there obviously we'll recommend your book, but is there a book or a website or an app or a documentary, anything that you are obsessed with right now and loving? I'd like to talk about.
No, I don't know if there's anything I'm so like enamored with right now. I'm sort of like listening to so many different things and I'm not even sure their names. Always sort of on the look for more spiritual, mindful practices, because I feel like that's very, very important, but there's nothing exactly that's popping out at the moment.
Any spiritual one that you wanted to, if there's something you want to share that you're doing or that you like, or?
I sometimes go to Insight Meditation and in Los Angeles and take their courses and I actually am going in December to I go to Ram Dass retreat in Hawaii every year. And he is been around forever. He's quite a remarkable man. He is in a wheelchair and like just really radiates love. And it's all about love and being present. And one of the things that he talks about is loving awareness and like doing the sort of meditation of like tapping on your chest and like saying, I am loving awareness. I feel like that just like cuts down to the like bare bones, like right to the heart of it. Literally just, I am loving awareness, because sometimes we forget it can be pretty simple.
And is there a success story you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I'm having them all the time. So this is really, but there was one success story that just recently happened. And because it involved a couple and their sexuality, I wanted to talk about it. There was a patients I had who they decided to do IVF. And one of the reasons was because this man wasn't able to ejaculate in his wife. And they went to the IVF clinic, and I think the first person they told was the reproductive endocrinologist, who was like, great, you'll do IVF. But nobody really worked with them in him learning how to do this, because no one referred him to any place, and they were kind of too ashamed to like seek out a sex therapist, which would have been a good fit, right? Mm-hmm. And when he came to me, I really had to uncover what was going on and just really normalize it. Like, sometimes, men, there's lots of reasons, right? I mean, sometimes men who masturbate have a different style of masturbation than when they make love and have intercourse with their partner, because it's a different feel, their hand and the vagina. And in this particular case, it was a different fit. He had a different style of masturbating and it didn't equate. So we had to retrain him to masturbate a little differently and maybe not masturbate as much. And so that he could, learn how to enjoy intercourse with his wife and also let go and ejaculate in her. So I've had a couple, this isn't like, I've had a few of these stories. And so they were on their way to do an IVF and took 3 months off and got pregnant naturally. So that was because we learned how to do that. So I had another patient who did IVF, who had the same problem, did IVF, and they I think they're due any moment now. So there's all sorts of different things about not having intercourse where people end up doing IVF, and I feel like that's a great practice to be able to learn how to enjoy sexuality.
Yeah, because there's a lot of shame around that, which someone could have, and being able to reach out for support. And wait a minute, it's like a lot of people can be struggling with that, and so asking for support is crucial.
I cannot believe when the reason I decided to write this book was I couldn't believe how many people were struggling and they had nowhere to go, and they started talking to me about their sex life and just so many things of like, I'm really not enjoying sex anymore. I don't know what to do. It's uncomfortable and painful, and trying to uncover why it's uncomfortable and painful for women. Like sometimes it's just not enough foreplay, and women don't know how to ask for that, and so, and they don't really know how to ask. There's like, again, shame in talking about it, and just asking for what they want. And so I just decided that we really needed to increase the communication and really start talking about intimacy and sexuality and how to bridge the two and how to talk about it.
Awesome. And so you have a free chapter of your book for the listeners, and can you share with them what they'll get in that? They can get that at denisewiesner.com, but what can they expect there?
The first chapter is really a deep dive into learning about our anatomy, both male and female, and how babies are made and what actually happens. But I take it a step further and talk about sort of anatomy through other traditions, Eastern traditions, like Native American traditions, of just how they view this sacred anatomy. And there's some pictures and illustrations, and just, so we can find out the erogenous zones. And there's a lot of good, juicy information in that chapter 1.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. So definitely check that out on her website, and I'll have the link in the show notes as well. And yeah, well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your words of wisdom around this topic. As you say, I think it is something that's you have to really increase the conversation around this, and know that, you're not alone, and other people are going through exactly the same thing you are. And really, I guess the bottom line for this is really to reconnect with each other and bring back that arousal, that desire, and reconnect.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
As 2019 is drawing to a close, I wanted to give you some bite-sized action steps that can help you right now, so that you have a plan for January to maximize your chances of conception. So I'm excited to announce that our Functional Fertility mini-series begins tomorrow, Tuesday, December the 3rd. All you need to do is go to iTunes or wherever you're listening to this, hit subscribe, and you'll be all ready to listen. So first episode drops tomorrow, Tuesday, December the 3rd. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.